Imagine you're a mighty ship sailing on a vast ocean. The course you set, the direction you choose, determines where you end up. Now, what if I told you you are that ship and your assumptions are your course? Welcome to the grand voyage of life, where you are the captain navigating through the waves of reality. Today, we delve into the intriguing concept of the law of assumption, a theory presented by the renowned metaphysician Neville Goddard. This law suggests that the reality we experience is a direct result of our assumptions. Yes, you heard that right. Your assumptions, whether they are as light as a feather or as heavy as an anchor, set your course in the sea of life. Picture your assumptions as the compass of your mighty ship. They point you in the direction you're headed, shaping your path and carving your destiny. If you assume you'll encounter stormy weather, your eyes will only see the ominous clouds, ignoring the clear skies. If you assume the voyage will be smooth, you'll navigate through even the roughest waves with ease and grace. Let's delve a little deeper. The law of assumption is not about wishful thinking or blind optimism. It's about consciously choosing your assumptions, steering your ship towards the shores of your desired reality. It's about realizing that you hold the map and the compass. You are not at the mercy of the winds, you are the master of your fate. What if you choose to assume that success is inevitable, that happiness is your birthright, that love and abundance are just around the corner? What course will your ship take then? Remember, your assumptions are powerful. They are the wind in your sails, the stars guiding you at night. They are the whispers of your soul, shaping your reality one thought at a time. So, as a ship sets course on the vast ocean, you too set your course in life with your assumptions. Embrace this power, welcome the journey, for in the grand voyage of life, you are the captain and your assumptions are your course. Ever heard of a baker who couldn't bake a loaf of bread? Sounds ridiculous, right? But I promise you, it's a tale worth hearing. In a quaint little town nestled in the heart of nowhere, there lived a baker, jolly and round, with a twinkle in his eye but a frown on his brow. This baker, our dear friend, had a peculiar problem. He couldn't bake a loaf of bread to save his life. Now don't get me wrong, he could bake pies, cookies, cakes, and pastries that would make your grandmother green with envy. But when it came to bread, well, let's just say it was his Achilles heel. Every morning, the baker would step into his bakery, a twinge of dread bubbling in his heart. He'd look at the flour, the yeast, the water, and think to himself, "Oh boy, here we go again." And as if on cue, his hands would start to shake and his forehead would break into a sweat. He'd mix the ingredients with a clumsy haste, trying to get it over with as quickly as possible. His dough, however, always turned out either too sticky or too dry. And his loaves, well, they were more akin to charcoal briquettes than anything else. The townsfolk would come into his bakery, their noses wrinkling at the burnt smell that hung in the air. "Morning, baker," they'd say, a hint of amusement in their eyes. "Burnt another loaf, did we?" And the baker, with a sheepish grin, would nod, his cheeks turning as red as the apples in his pies. The baker, you see, had convinced himself that he was incapable of baking bread. He assumed failure before he even began, and as a result, he always failed. His assumption had become a self-fulfilling prophecy, a cycle that seemed impossible to break. And so our dear baker, with his burnt loaves and deflated dough, was a living testament to his own misguided assumptions. Now, what if I told you that this bumbling baker had a secret ingredient up his sleeve? And no, it wasn't yeast. In the realm of our baker's life, he stumbled upon a pearl of wisdom, a principle so profound it was akin to unearthing buried treasure. This was the law of assumption, a concept brought to light by Neville Goddard. This law postulates that one's reality is a reflection of their inner beliefs and assumptions. Our baker, once a purveyor of burnt loaves and crumbled pastries, realized that he had been unwittingly applying this law all along. He had been assuming failure, and failure was what he got. It was like he was baking his bread with a recipe for disaster. But the beauty of this law, he found, was that it could be used to bake a different kind of bread, a bread of success, if you will. So he decided to try something new. he began to assume that he could bake the best bread in town. Every morning, as he prepared his dough, he visualized his hands skillfully kneading, shaping, and baking loaves of golden, perfect bread. He could smell the mouth-watering aroma, could hear the satisfying crunch as he imagined breaking a loaf apart. He felt the joy, the pride, as customers lined up to buy his bread, their faces lighting up with genuine satisfaction. With every passing day, this new assumption was kneaded into the dough of his existence, baked in the oven of his consciousness. He replaced the old stale beliefs of failure with fresh ones of success. His actions began to align with his new assumption. He found himself researching new techniques, experimenting with ingredients, and paying more attention to the baking process. He started to believe, not just hope, but truly believe that he could bake the best bread in town. And this belief, this assumption, began to manifest in his reality. His bread started to improve. It was no longer burnt or crumbled, but golden and delicious. And just like that, our baker had set a new course, steering away from the island of burnt loaves. If you think that our baker's loaves suddenly started coming out golden and perfect, well, you're absolutely right. It's almost as if the oven itself had changed, as if the yeast and flour had taken on a life of their own. But it wasn't the oven nor the ingredients, it was the baker, his belief in himself, his faith in his ability to bake the perfect loaf made all the difference. You see, once he stopped assuming failure, his bread started to rise. Not just a little, but high and mighty, golden brown and perfectly textured. His new mindset swapped the burnt crust and doughy insides for the perfect loaf, so soft and warm that it would melt in your mouth. Word quickly spread around town. People flocked to get a taste of the baker's bread. The bread that was once the laughingstock of the town. Lines formed outside his little bakery every morning, and by noon, not a single loaf was left. His bread was a sensation, a miracle of the perfect balance between crust and crumb. The baker was no longer just a baker. He became a symbol of what one can achieve when they shift their assumptions. He became the embodiment of the law of assumption. His success story wasn't just about a man who learned to bake the perfect loaf. It was about a man who learned to believe in himself, who learned to change his assumptions, who learned to assume success instead of failure. This is the power of the law of assumption, the power of positive thinking. It's not some trick or magic spell. It's simply a change in mindset, a shift in beliefs, and this shift, this simple change, can turn a failing baker into the most successful one in town. And so the baker who couldn't bake a loaf was now the baker who baked the best loaf in town. All because he dared to change his assumptions. Now, you might be thinking, that's all well and good for our baker friend, but how does this apply to me? Well, let me tell you. You see, the law of assumption isn't just for bakers or for those with a knack for kneading dough. It's for each one of us. It's for you, it's for me, it's for that neighbor who always seems to have the greenest lawn on the block. It's as universal as gravity, as constant as time. So let's examine this law in the context of our own lives. We all have assumptions. We've all at some point said, I can't do this, or I'm not good enough for that. And what happened? We didn't do it. We weren't good enough. Not because we lacked the ability or the talent, but because we assumed we did. We set the stage for our own defeat. Now, imagine if we changed those assumptions. What if instead we said, I can do this, or I am good enough? What if we assumed success instead of failure? Well, just like our baker friend, we'd find our lives taking a turn for the better. We'd find ourselves rising to the occasion, overcoming obstacles, achieving what once seemed impossible. Our assumptions shape our expectations, our actions, and ultimately, our lives. And the beauty of it all is that we're in control. We can choose what to assume. We can choose to assume the best in ourselves, in others, and in the situations we face. So I encourage you, take a moment to examine your assumptions. Are they holding you back or propelling you forward? Are they rooted in fear or in faith? Remember, your assumptions are powerful. They can be your greatest obstacle or your greatest ally. So remember, Just like our baker, you have the power to set your course. You have the power to change your assumptions. And in doing so, you have the power to change your life.